Hello and welcome to Dragonfire podcast. In this episode, we have Dr. Eugene Lipov, who is pioneering some breakthrough treatment on trauma recovery and healing from trauma. Eugene, do you want to share a bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a physician. I completed the anesthesia residency and the pain training. So I was able to take an old procedure that's been used for pain since 1925 and adopt it to make it highly useful for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which the name hopefully will change soon. So my particular perspective on trauma, it's a biologic, it's a real condition. So it can be diagnosed as a real condition and treated as a biologic condition rapidly. We're talking about a day or two, not much more than that. So that's what hopefully sets me apart a little bit. Then talk therapy and pharmaceuticals, I'm not for that. Talk therapy after we do the right procedure to calm people down, I think that's the right way of doing it.
Yeah.
That's my perspective.
Yeah, I sort of tie this into my journey where I have done talk therapy for years. Obviously, I only recently discovered your procedure through the book, The Invisible Machine, and now the next book that you've released, which I highly recommend, The God Shot. Brilliant book. And putting everything together with the talk therapy and everything, we'll move into the procedure. But I just also want a bit about your background, what your background is with trauma, how you've had that involved in your life. Obviously, there's your parents, just for people out there to realize that you've been through this yourself. You were living in very tense, very hard biological states, which includes trauma, pain, all of that.
Sure. All right, so you want to give me basically a quick summary. Sure.
Very quick.
So I was born in Ukraine, not a great place to be born in 1958. And then my father was a flyer in World War II. So out of a squadron of 10,000 people, 100 made it home. So he was not in the best shape. And then he gave it to my mother. It's called secondary PTSD, where you can actually infect somebody with PTSD. And then I also got PTSD from him. Because he was a very tough guy and he was really working very hard to survive, and unfortunately it was really hard way to do it. So from Ukraine we went to Moscow, but before we left Ukraine we had an incident where two guys found this rusted log. They thought, turned out it was an anti-personnel shell. So fortunately my father didn't let us play with those guys at that particular day. They exploded and they lost their arms and legs. So it was pretty traumatic. So we went to Moscow from there. From Moscow, we ended up in Chicago. And then I got hit by a propeller blade when I was finishing medical school. And I lost half my blood volume. I ended up in the white tunnel people talk about. So that was another interesting trauma. Then my mother took her life about 8 months later after I finished medical school and when I was doing surgical residency. And that was really terrible. That was the worst trauma in my life. And then that kind of lost me my ability to finish surgical residency because it was a little too intense to try to survive through all this. Anyway, so I finished anesthesia residency and then I did some pain. I was an assistant professor at Rush for 7 years of anesthesia. And, I had some other interesting trauma along the way, such as my wife almost died from relatively easy to diagnose condition. So we had to take her out of the big hospitals downtown Chicago and save her life in another hospital. So that was very traumatic. That flipped me for a loop, especially considering my mother's death.
Yeah.
And then my kid was somewhat feisty after all of that happened. And that kept triggering me, actually, what led for me to have diagnosed of fugues, which is basically you're walking around like a zombie. It's pretty interesting. Somebody who can function at work and then be zombie-like at home. So one of my buddies diagnosed me with that, and I had my stellar ganglion block, which is the injection like we're going to be talking about today. It resolved my problems significantly, and I was able to help my wife, I was able to help my kid, and myself. So here we sit today talking about it.
Right. That's a lot to deal with. Obviously, you didn't have It's, it's
Can't make it up. I wish it was all bullshit, but
no,
it's.
it sounds like a horror movie.
I know it's like and after that, of course, it's Eugene. It's like let's give him a shaft again.
Yeah.
But I got to admit, since then, I've had an amazing life. So
You've just obviously for the men out there that are wanting to get their life together, this is something Eugene pretty much was in the thick of it.
yeah, I was swimming in the deep end for sure. But I think the key point is there is a term that I'd like to introduce you to. And you may know it. It's called hormesis. Ever
Yep.
heard that term?
I have.
Yeah, hormesis is basically a medical term that means, for lay people, it means what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So that was, scientists figured out in the 19th century basically by trying to kill some fungus, whatever, made them stronger. So
Yep.
it turns out if it doesn't kill you, it can turn on certain genes, which makes you more resilient, which is great.
Yeah.
But you can be both resilient and highly affected by the trauma where your fight and flight nerves are overactive. So you can't sleep, you're hypervigilant, you have sexual dysfunction, you're always cranky. All of those signs of overactive sympathetic nervous system. So when I got that under control, my resilience was much more apparent.
And okay, explain to us how you got that under control.
Well, so in order to that, I need to explain that stellate ganglion block is what it's not.
Yeah.
So if you look at what trauma is, so a lot of people ask me, what exactly is trauma from your perspective? Trauma, so when somebody has, let's say people go on patrol and half of the squad gets killed, or somebody's raped, or there is somebody, being bullied. Trauma over time and sudden trauma does the same thing in the brain. It activates norepinephrine secretion, which is a fight and flight transmitter. That's what gave you this revved up feeling. So when you almost got hit by a bus, let's say, you're looking around, you're hypervigilant, you can't sleep, you're revved up. Those are the signs of trauma. Yep. So the trauma is big enough or over enough a period of time, it produces NGF, nerve growth factor, which is a substance produced in the brain and goes from there to stellate ganglion, which is a connection, it's a nexus between sympathetic chain in the chest, which is fight and flight nerves, they go connect here and go up to the brain. Just how God built it.
Yep.
So when NGF is produced from severe trauma, it goes to the ganglion. Once it hits there, it activates extra nerve growth of sympathetic nerves. It's called sprouting, like leaves. So let's say there's normally 4 nerves, now you got 8 nerves. Each one of those nerves produces norepinephrine. So if you take the fluid around the brain, it's called CSF, of somebody with PTSD, it's going to be twice as high norepinephrine supposed to be, who doesn't have it.
Yep.
So as long as it persists, I could persist 60, 70 years. As long as it persists, people are going to have those symptoms. So when we put local anesthetic onto the nexus or stellate, 2 things happen. Number one, norepinephrine drops like a stone the first 5-10 minutes. So people can feel markedly better immediately. Great to see. Second, it reduces NGF. It is required to maintain that extra nerve growth. So now you go from 8 back down to 4, and that's called pruning. So an injection lasts about 8 hours, but that fact, the longest outlier right now is 17 years. So the way I had it done, I had my chairman did the procedure on me, and I was able to sleep. I wasn't triggering. I certainly was not fuging, which is like, and then I had psychotherapy, trauma-informed psychotherapy, and that worked beautiful for me.
So basically, just a rundown for people that are diving into their trauma. When you've been traumatized, whether it be from one incident or an ongoing procession of traumatic events, your baseline elevates, your stellate ganglion expands and grows extraneural next pathways.
I mean, not stellate ganglion, the sympathetic nerves in the brain. That's what grows. Stellate ganglion itself doesn't change the size.
Okay. Yes.
It goes from here. So basically, if you think about it, it's a connection, right? You have stellate, you got sympathetic nerves from here. They connect in the neck right here.
Yep.
And from there, the last part goes from neuron, sympathetic neuron goes from here to the brain. And the tips of that nerve is what grows extra inside the brain, not the neck.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just visualizing that in my mind. Basically,
you a picture. You can put it up in the notes if you want.
Yeah,
Published in 2009, Unified Theory of Stellate. There is a nice picture in there.
yeah. I'll link that to the podcast as well, so other people can take a look at it. With trauma, with this heightened state, there's obviously ways you can try and limit it or bring your state down, but the stellate ganglion block has an 80% efficacy. Is that correct, roughly?
The efficacy is about that correct. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
So then what happens to the body, to the nervous system, to the mind also after being in such a heightened state? You know, things like the hippocampus being overactive and the prefrontal cortex not being as active. How would someone bring all of that back into a balanced state?
Well, you got almost all of it right. The main actor here is amygdala.
Yeah. Okay.
Amygdala is overactive. Hippocampus is the memory. That gets reduced. The power of that gets reduced because, well, whatever. Let me give you a real world example, and then we can talk about the biology of it, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So basically, when we had a patient that was injured in Vietnam a few years ago, so he was in and out of AA, he was in and out of various places, institutions, addictions, whatever.
Yeah.
Couldn't sleep. He was pretty miserable, and he made his family quite miserable. So we did one block on him. He came out. He cried for about 30 minutes after the block. And I said, "Why are you crying?" He said, I have not felt an emotion for 50 years. So then I saw him again 3 years later at our non-for-profit fundraiser. And he was saying how much I was able to be calm, do his work, his family reconnected. And both of his sons came by and they said, you gave us our father back, because he was able to calm down, right? So that's key. So biologically, what happens when you scan somebody's brain using, so when people talk about, well, let's talk about the name change first, and that's connected.
Mhm.
So I believe the name needs to be changed to PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury, because it's a biologic condition. People say PTSD is an invisible wound. It's invisible if you have the wrong scanner. If you have the right scanners, like advanced scanners like fMR, PET scans, things like that, you can actually see overactivation of the amygdala. Amygdala is fear center. Unfortunately, when somebody has too much PTSD or PTSD, PFC, prefrontal cortex, becomes less powerful, and so is hippocampus. The job of PFC and hippocampus, which is a memory part, is to suppress the amygdala. So if it's not working right, it's not going to work well.
Yeah.
What we're doing with the stellate, it was reducing the overactivity of the amygdala. And you can actually see it in a brain scan. I can send you a paper on that from Dr. 𝐒𝐿𝐻𝐼, 2015. He did the PET scan, and you can actually see the activation. The most important part is you can see it, but also the patients are better. So I'm a clinician, so that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
The bottom line then is amygdala deactivation is what we're trying to achieve.
Yes. That will bring everything down. The stress responses, the hypervigilance,
Right.
etc.
Amygdala, when it's overactive, it kicks fight and flight nerves into gear.
Yeah.
It also maintains inflammation. Inflammation leads to depression, muscle loss, and it leads to more depression, and so on.
Yeah. Yes. And that's something I can definitely vouch for as someone who is still dealing with childhood trauma and CPTSI, I would call it, because I do believe also with your description change, it's not a disorder, it is an injury that can be healed through many processes, alternative therapies. I've done plant medicine, this and that. I am booked in as we spoke. I'm probably less than 2 weeks out now from my first shot, which I'll be getting both. So I'll be getting the dual shots. And
how did the first one go?
Pardon?
How did the first one go?
I haven't had it yet. First one will be on the 17th, second on the 24th. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I woke up at 1:30 last night, couldn't get back to sleep. It's now 7:30 almost. So yeah, that is a big one for me. Sleep, the hypervigilance, all of that state where even as much as I try to meditate and be, recognize the patterns when things are elevating, this and that,
Because one of the things this is what I would tell your audience. It's like psychotherapy in that space to me is ridiculous because if you think about it, it's like if you have a broken leg, carrying a rucksack on your back and riding down the mountain is not going to work.
Yeah.
Fix the leg, and then you can do effective therapy. We took care of a guy. So we have a clinic, as you know, in Australia.
Yep.
So took care of our people. Took care of a guy who was a policeman. His job was to pick up dead bodies from tunnels. Lovely job. Anyway, so he was depressed and he had all the usual stuff going on that you can imagine.
Yeah.
So his therapist was also his psychiatrist. So he tried every therapeutic modality, all the drugs and everything. No progress. So he had the block, and then 2 weeks later, he was a completely different guy because he was actually now able to talk to him. He was able to stay calm, and he was
Yeah.
able to sleep. As you said, sleep is huge.
It is.
You know it.
Yeah, I know it well. I don't think I've ever slept well in my life. And looking back, because I grew up with my grandparents, I lived with them for 16 years. My grandfather was 5.5 years in a Nazi camp, Polish. He was taken by the Nazis. My grandmother also. And growing up with also, I've forgotten the word, ancestral trauma. I'll just use that word. As we know through
Actually, it's called generational trauma.
generational trauma, that's it. Generational trauma.
If I may interrupt you for a second. So the key point to remember is that there are genes it's like your grandfather's genetics is in you now. That made you more vulnerable to develop PTSD. It's called epigenetics for people who are interested.
Epigenetics.
So the saying goes, if so nature loads the gun, meaning you got the DNA that you got, and you have the activated genes there, or you don't.
Yeah.
Circumstance fires it. Meaning, if you were born into a very quiet, peaceful family and everything was marvelous, maybe you and I wouldn't be talking right now, or maybe we would. But it sounds like your childhood was spunky. That's a term I use quite often, especially in special cases.
Yeah.
Spunky childhood fires the gun for sure. It activates genetic expression, and it makes those extra nerves grow in your brain, and that's why you can't sleep. It's that simple.
Yeah. And I look back to times that I lived with my grandparents where I was a young boy and teenager, and I would make a noise or something, and he'd wake up and be very angry and and now I get it. Because he probably couldn't sleep during the night.
Yeah, he probably couldn't sleep anyway.
No, I don't
Now,
think so.
the little sleep he got, now you interrupted.
Yeah.
That's a catastrophe, right? For
Absolutely.
so people, that's the problem. So his wife, I can tell you, she had to walk around in eggshells.
Yeah. Well,
and so on. And this is like not, I still run into people and they're like shocked that that exists. It's like, it's such a common experience in human nature. It just, the problem is most people look at psychiatric condition as unknowable, that the brain is this unknowable something or other it does. We don't know what it does. We know what it does. That's what you think. You cut out the brain, you can't think anymore. Shocking.
it kind of works that way, doesn't it?
I got to tell you my favorite story. Phineas Cage. So this was 19th century, and he was a manager for tunnels for railroad. So his job was to take a 1 inch across pole, 6 feet tall. He would make a hole in stone, put dynamite in it, and explode it. So this time he put dynamite, but it was a little aggressive. So the pole exploded in his hand, went through his face, came out the other side of the head, and landed about 20 feet away. So he had literally a hole this big in his brain. So they take him to Mayo Clinic, and they said, he can walk, he can talk, everything's fine, go away, nothing's wrong. There was only little problem. Every time he saw women, he would drop his pants, try to rape them. He became animalistic. The point is, there is different part of the brain we need all of it, not just pieces.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were saying.
Absolutely lost track of what I was saying.
You haven't slept, buddy. You haven't slept, buddy. That's why.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about my book. Let me tell you about the book.
Well, let's move on to that. Yeah. Also,
let's do something more positive.
Pardon?
Let's do something more positive.
Yes, let's do that.
The whole premise of the book is a book of hope, meaning you can get better.
Mm.
So nobody commits suicide if they have hope. So the
Yeah.
point is the biologic way of treating various medical conditions. So there is a rise of, it's called interventional psychiatry,
Mhm.
where like stellar ganglion block, resetting sympathetic nervous system,
Yep.
ketamine, which calms your nerves down and activates brain growth, works really well for depression. TMS, which is transmagnetic stimulation, which is electrical way of doing it. So the point is, if things have not worked for you before, try something different.
And I think that's the point of it, isn't it? It's this procedure that you have brought to the world is that difference. My view, and I've shared this with you before, is that I don't feel like humanity is going to advance unless we get past our collective trauma and our individual traumas. I just imagine how different life would be for myself and other people that I've heard stories of. There was one guy that's come to my men's circles. He's an educator working with children. These are teenagers that are living in absolute survival mode.
Right.
And
Well,
I look at my life, how it would have been totally different had I had parents who had regulated nervous system, understood what emotions were, not let them just run wild and run the household, and I have children living in fear and as a young child hiding and then getting beaten and all sorts of things. That's just, it really fucks people up. And then
that's true.
being able to just, I don't know, focus on creating a career for yourself or whatever it is you choose to do with your life instead of this survival mode where it literally it ruins lives. It ruins lives. And if we can help people grow up in a stable environment, society will change. Society will become more balanced. I believe there will be less problems, less wars, all sorts of things like that. And humanity
Well,
will
that
just
I agree, because tit for tat, it's a problem. But the other thing to remember is that PTSD leads to, besides suicide, it also increases chance of heart attack by a factor of 2,
yeah.
possibly cancer, depression. All of that is connected. And now that we have our wonderful cell phones, they create what I'm starting to call digital PTSD. So it's
Oh yeah.
interesting. PTSD or PTSI
Yep.
and digital addiction has a common root. They
Yep.
both cause inflammation because they both lead to lack of sleep. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
So that's the next. We've had enough problems already. Now we're adding to them with digital addictions.
And I think even things like the like button on Facebook, there was a study done that after the like button came out, how there was a spike in depression for particularly girls.
Right.
Anyway, that's something else. So let's get back to the book. Let's talk about your brilliant discovery, your contribution to humanity, and how people's lives are changing, and the results that you've had. And like I said earlier, your book at 2 periods in the book, it brought me to tears because I could relate, especially to the snipers' situation of not wanting to be here anymore, which I have been in, and it's not a nice place to be. That's also something for anyone listening. There is something called the internal family therapy, which I highly recommend looking into because there is a reason for that suicidal ideation. Sorry. Anyway, let's please share a bit more about
You
the
want,
book.
you want the story of the sniper. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I knew this gentleman. He came in, he had back pain. I took care of his back pain. He came back a year later. His wife is saying he wanted to kill himself. And I was like, you should be admitted to the hospital. And he says, no, if I go there, I'm going to die there. I was like, okay. And I said, really putting me in the bed. He said, I just want the shot. I don't want anything else.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Technically, you're supposed to put somebody like that in the hospital. So,
Yeah.
and I said, you put me in a really awkward position. He said, it's not about you, Doc. It's about me. I was like, okay. He got me caught there a bit. So now I have a very different system set up around all of that.
Yeah.
But at that time, I said, all right, fine. So I took him to the operating room. I did the procedure and nothing happened. It didn't work. So there's certainly a failure rate with the procedure. So 40 minutes go by and I'm looking at him. I was like, at that point, I'm sweating pretty profusely.
Mm.
And And before I got into the PTSD world, I was doing hot flashes. So I was out in Norway, and I've learned a procedure how to do a higher type of injection. Same thing, only higher up. So I took him back to the operating room, did the procedure, and then on the way out, he gave me a high five. He said, "I feel great, Doc. I'll see you later." And he survived. So then it took me a bit to figure out why that would actually work. And I
Yep.
found the answer in this little book. It's called Stellar Ganglion Block, that was published in 1972. So there is an answer in there, basically. So it turns out there are two places where the nerves from the chest go up to the brain. So I'm actually writing a new book on that textbook. But the bottom line is, if I didn't listen to the patient, first of all, he would have died.
Yeah.
Second of all, we were able to fix him. And, from some old book actually gave me the explanation why. So I was very ecstatic to be able to help him and his family.
Yeah. So then that was your discovery, the big discovery that it's now the C7 and C3. Is that correct? Or next to the C7 and
What we try to do is ultrasound. We do
C6 and C4.
we,
Okay.
we don't do X-ray anymore. I think ultrasound is better, but you can still do X-ray. Sure, X-ray works.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically there are two ganglia in the neck, which are the most important. There are three, but the two main ones is C3 and C7.
Yeah.
But I was able to figure out that stellate actually works, the original stellate. So I did it for years, and it was working pretty good. But you always want to make it better.
Of course, yeah. So with the discovery, basically where you found out that you'd missed the mark, so to speak, the first time, and then you got it the second time, how did things unfold from there?
I think it helped to increase the outcome, but I think the main thing is stellate itself, stellate ganglion block being used for PTSD. That was kind of the big breakthrough. That was mind-blowing to me because nobody's ever done it. I can tell you how that came about if you like.
Yes, please.
So and I'm a pain physician. So the first time I did stellate ganglion block was 1987. So I had a patient in 2002, something like that. So that lady had severe hot flashes. So I took care of her neck pain, and she said, "I have hot flashes." I sent to my brother, who is a great doctor, and I said, "Take care of hot flashes." I don't do hot flashes. I just do pain. Anyway, so he tried, nothing worked. So he said, "You do this procedure, stellate ganglion block, for hand sweats, which should work for the whole body sweating." I said, "No, it doesn't." He said, "How do you know?" I said, "I have no idea." Anyway, I did the procedure, worked great. Then he sent me more patients. They did great. And then Chicago Tribune was going to do this story on me, which they did. But I knew I was in trouble when the first line says, "Bianca Kennedy, this beautiful breast cancer survivor, let Dr. Lipov plunge a syringe needle to her neck to get rid of the hot flashes." And their concern was that I didn't know how it worked. I knew it worked. And then they went to Northwestern, and they badmouthed me there. They went to Rush, what I did with fellowship and all of that.
Yep.
Anyway, so that gave me a lot of encouragement to figure out why it worked. So I came across an article. That is about 3,000 articles based on trying to understand that. So one article was from Finland, where they were putting a clip in the chest to fight and flight nerves for hand sweats. And they found that PTSD went away. So then I reviewed it. Turns out this stellate or sympathetic chain from the chest goes to the neck, and from neck to the head. And then I called up my brother. I said, "Send me a PTSD patient," which he had. He was on his way to be admitted to psychiatric ward because of PTSD after trauma. So we treated him on the way to the hospital. He didn't have to be admitted. He did great. So that's how it all started. So the first time was done was 2006 for PTSD. That was 20 years now.
Yeah. And as you said before, the procedure was first used for hot flashes in the early 1900s, was it?
No. It was used for pain. 1925, pain. First time it was used for hot flashes was by me, and first publication came out 2005. Pain. So CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome, which is burning of the hand. It's been used for headaches, other things.
Migraines, yeah.
Migraines, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so anything else you want to share on the books or the procedure?
I think it's effective. Anybody who thinks they need it, get evaluated, and hopefully you will get, they'll make sure you're right candidate, make sure that they'll do a good job for you. And I think they will. I mean, we have a good crew in Australia.
Yeah,
Um, as far as the book, I think you'd enjoy it. It comes in audiobook also if you'd like it. It's on Amazon. Physical book. I don't know how easy to get a physical one in Australia. I have no idea.
I had only
Um,
listened to the audiobook, but I did see it's
yeah,
available on Amazon now, because when I first checked, it wasn't actually available in physical form, but since I've checked,
it
it
is
is.
now.
Yeah,
Oh, nice, perfect. It also comes in Spanish if you're interested in Spanish, which I do not speak. But the writer who actually wrote it she's an amazing woman, and I think she's done a beautiful job. I think it's an easy read. I hope you found it to be easy and informative. I hope it
I
helps
did.
lives.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, again, that's part of my chosen mission, if you want to call it, in life. I want to help people get through things they've been through, particularly working with men, helping them be better husbands, fathers, brothers, whatever it is. And trauma is something that so many people have. And unfortunately, a lot
Yeah,
of men wait until the shit hits the fan before they actually do something. So if you're uncomfortable with life and things are coming up, I would highly recommend looking into this. There's also the Stella Centre in Melbourne, Sydney, Gold Coast in Australia, and you also have in the States and Israel.
right. Yeah, we have 24 sites in US and then one in Israel. But let me just give you some parting words, if I may. I
Mm-hmm.
think I had to sum it up. So, being a male myself, I prefer not to deal with uncomfortable things if I have a choice.
Oh, of course.
However, it ain't worth it. And the great thing about Stella Ganglion approach, you don't have to discuss it, you don't have to go over difficult things, you don't have to talk to your belly button, you don't have to sit in weird positions, you don't do any of that.
Mm.
So it's kind of the perfect, it's a perfect procedure for a male in the sense that you don't have to do nothing. You just need to sit there, poof, and you have a result. And you don't have to wait that long. We're not talking about years of difficult therapy so that's a great thing. But
Yeah,
if you have the signs you cannot sleep, over anxious, if you're a crankinator, then you should really get treated. And the other thing to remember, your DNA gets passed down if
yeah,
you're lucky enough to have children, and you're also affecting your spouse. So
yeah,
you're responsible for yourself and people around you.
absolutely.
So if you think of it that way, I think it's an easy decision. But if you want to learn about, kind of my story and, stories of special forces, their spouses, other things, if you want to learn about, my understanding of these psychedelics, that's all in this book. It's supposed to be very user friendly and sciencey. It's not deep science, but it's accurate.
Yeah.
So Lauren, the writer, did a beautiful job translating relatively complex scientific statements into plain language.
And it is. It was very easily digestible. That was something I found brilliant about the book. Also, I'm not a doctor. I do find a very deep interest in how the mind works, how the physiology of the human body works, particularly with things like trauma and our responses to it, how to balance and regulate nervous systems, etc., because that is part of my work with men. And also, I think I'm sort of branching out to women now as well, because as you just said, they're also affected.
Oh
So
yeah, they're affected. And actually, if you look at the numbers, if a woman has the same trauma as a man, the chance of developing PTSD is twice as high in women. They're more sensitive.
really,
Plus, it
well, yeah, that makes sense. Their nervous systems are way more sensitive than ours.
right. We're like, who cares? They're like, oh my god, what do they think about me? Oh no, what are they going to think about me? It's just how biology is. It's not making
It
fun of
is,
women.
yeah.
It's just how to build it. And
Yeah,
also, if you think about a third of women in the United States are sexually attacked in their lifetime.
yeah,
So
that's
half of them develop PTSD, which is a much higher number than the military and men. So the numbers are actually women are the primary person with PTSD, not the man.
yeah,
People don't think about it, but that's how it is. That's the reality.
yeah. And I said basically what you said before, how my grandmother would have been walking on eggshells, and absolutely, because I know even from my own marriage, times that if I was triggered by something, I wasn't necessarily angry with my wife. It was just that anger I was holding in my body, and she can feel that. She can feel that, and
Yeah,
all
if
of
you feel
our
that, you
wives can.
relax. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yes. Well,
All right. Oh, how about this? Why don't we do a follow up after you had your block?
I'm
Let's see how
going
you
to.
do.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So we'll do a before and after.
Just
I'm
do it
doing.
before. You haven't slept enough. That's why you're swimming.
Eugene, I swear, I took, and we had this conversation. I've been taking melatonin, which I want to get off, and I know it's not good for me. Took a melatonin, had half a sleeping tablet last night. At 1:30, I'm awake. I'm just like, oh, okay. And I put the falsetto on. I put a meditation on, and just like, it's okay. Get up. So yes, I'm having 2 shots. The dual, what's it called? The dual sympathetic reset, which is 2 on the right-hand side to start with. Then a week later, because they can't be done at the same time, the left side. And let's see.
All right. Hopefully it works great, buddy.
I have a very good feeling about it.
Follow up.
Yeah. Okay, Eugene, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thanks,
Thank
buddy.
you for your contribution to humanity. Seriously, that's
I'm
like,
fine.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.